I want to talk a little bit about command line arguments right now. A command line argument is an argument that is entered at the command line. We all know what arguments are. Arguments are values or variables that are passed to parameters and functions if you're talking about function programming using a high-level programming language. Command line arguments are variables or values that are passed at the command line. And the command line is your prompt. So Windows prompt in DOS, or here I'm showing my Unix command line. If you have command line arguments, your program or script should also have what's called a usage clause, which shows the user how the syntax or what command line arguments are required to run that program. For example, if I type in grep, which is a common Unix utility, you see the usage clause, the keyword usage : and then we get the grep, and then any options and the pattern, then the files, and you can do grep -- help for more information. I have a script that accepts your name and your age, which is a bash script, and it checks to see if the number is not equal to 2, and if it's not equal to 2, it prints out this usage clause. Another script is expecting at least 4 words. So again, if I put anything less than 4, then I get the usage clause, and in this one I gave a little bit of additional information. So looking from a C or a C++ perspective with command line arguments, they are passed as arguments to main. So now the main function is actually going to take parameters. And in C, C++, the parameters are an argc and an argv vector, which is actually an array of character arrays. Remember, in C there are no strings, so you have character arrays to represent strings. So argv is actually an array of arrays, or a 2D array, or a vector. So in C, C++, and Java and Python have equivalent functionality, but in C, C++, the two parameters for main that are involved with command line arguments are argc and argv. Argc is an integer, and that's the number of command line arguments that are passed to the program. And argv, like I said, is that two-dimensional array. So each row of the array will be a character array itself, which will be an argument. So argv0, the first element of the array, is always the program name. The second argument of the array, argv1, will be the first command line argument, argv2 will be the second, and so forth. So we can look at the code here. Again, I have the integer argc and a character array, argv array. If argc is less than 3, I'm expecting 2 command line arguments, and we also have the program name. So if it's less than 3, then I'm going to print out the usage clause and tell the user how to run this program properly with the correct number of command line arguments. You will notice in my print statement, and printf is used to print in C instead of the cout, and it's a format string. But really what this says is I'm going to print out argv0 and then the 2 command line arguments that are expected. So that way, if I recompile this program as a different name instead of a.out, so like I compiled it to args, then argv0 will always display the program name, how the user ran the program, that the user used to run the program. So it's always going to be accurate instead of hard coding the program name in the usage clause statement. So if the number of command line arguments is less than 3, I'm going to print the usage clause and I'm going to end the program, because most of the time, if you don't have the proper command line arguments, the program won't run properly. And then I just copy the first argument to name, and I copy the second argument to age. Now you'll notice I use an ATI function here because I have age declared as an integer. All command line arguments are passed as strings, or in C's case, character arrays. And then I'll print out the information. So if I run this again, if I compile it as an args -o args, then when I run it as args without any, I get usage name args name a.out. If I just compile it to a.out, when I run it, then it says a.out. So that by printing the value of argv0 instead of hard coding the program name in the usage clause, it allows the user to run the program as any program name, depending on how it was compiled, what the executable name is. So now if I run args with Joe21, the program runs. I do not get the usage clause. Now, one of the things that you have to think about is how do you want to check for the usage? So let's say I put in another variable. It still runs properly, and what this program did was ignored everything past the second command line argument, or really the third command line argument if you're counting the program name. Another program might want to worry about that. So in that case, I might want to check, instead of saying if the number of arguments argc is less than 3, maybe I want to say does it not equal 3? So that way, if I enter too many command line arguments, I will also get a usage clause. So command line arguments are arguments or values or variables that are passed to a function. Command line arguments are arguments that are passed to a program when the program is run at the command line. And if you have a program that accepts command line arguments, you should also have a usage clause in that program and properly end the program if that's what should happen if there are an improper number of command line arguments passed.